Hey folks, welcome back to The Next Bite. In today's episode, we're doing an interview with Tom Zaubermann. He's a cybersecurity expert who's got a lot of experience doing hacking, but specifically is focused on the automotive realm. So we talked through the principles of cybersecurity in automotive, some of his advice for people buying new cars, which car to buy, what to look for, and then also his advice on how to dive into cybersecurity and become an expert just like him. It's a really interesting conversation. Let's jump right on into it.
All right, Tom, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
I feel like this has been in the works for so long since we started the partnership with SAE, but they finally brought us together, and we're so excited to have you. The topic of cybersecurity, obviously it's a hot one in today's world. Everything's connected, but automotive cybersecurity is a close one for Daniel and I because we love cars. And I'm sure for a lot of our listeners that drive cars or interact with cars on a daily basis, it really hits home for them. Now, but before we, get into the topics and everything like that, let's talk a little bit about you, right? Introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me. As part of my role, or I would say as an instructor for the SAE, for the cybersecurity for vehicle, basically for cars. I'm doing a lot of other stuff, a lot of not only cybersecurity, but mostly cybersecurity. That's basically my daily bread and butter. I started my road basically when I with my uncle. He has a master in computer engineering. When I was around 14, we started a lot with the programming, C++. We went a bit to electrical engineering. Soldering some stuff together, if probably guys know the STM32 units back then. For the guys who knows this one, I'm talking about 2008, 7, something like that. Then we started there, and that's where my path with the computer started generally, and also with electronics. Then later I just mostly continued by myself. I did a lot of started to do a lot of small pen testing for like law firms and networking pen testing and stuff like that. Just for fun mostly, and get some money on the side as a like summer job style. It was pretty nice, pretty cool. But of course there was a lot of learning phases, even like installing some servers for some firmware for some firms, or stuff like that. It was pretty nice and pretty easy, but I learned a lot during this like going and really with the cables and everything, and creating the network cables. I remember it was super nice and super learning. Like I learned a lot from doing the the physical work as well. But then I did a few small stuff, also military service, and then later on I went to the I started working in stock market company the stock market company I did I manage all the security appliances and from network, like IT security, a lot of IT security, like installing firewalls and stuff like that. Then I became the head of security there. So we managed like 700 people there. Like it was like 700 people, and there was I had like 15 people there managing their security team. It was pretty nice. Everything was very cool. But then I just had this. It was like, I don't know, for around 2 years, 1.5, 2 years, and then it was like I had this. I want to try somewhere else around the world, something a bit more globalized, international. So I just decided to move to Africa. I got a job in Africa. It was pretty nice. I worked there with the United Bank of Africa, with Fidelity Bank. I did some drilling sites, pen testing, stuff like that. It was really, really cool. I did it for around 2 years, and then later on I started to do other projects around the world, like in Vietnam, like in Hanoi. I did some nice with the Central Bank of Vietnam, or Petro Vietnam, the petrol company from Vietnam. anyway, it was really, really nice. Until I got the job at Volkswagen, I went back. I started working in Volkswagen in Germany. That's when I moved to Germany. It was around 2016. And I started to work in Volkswagen. I was head of security testing there, working together with a company called Automotive. I was one of the first guys there started working on cybersecurity. That was before probably the guys was from the car industry, before Carrier, before the whole SAE also came up. Before the regulation came up, it's pretty new. So it was around 2016, 2017. And that's where my road with my path with cybersecurity for cars started. So basically, before that, I had even no idea about cars at all. You could ask me about I couldn't differentiate between BMW and Volkswagen at all. So
Oh, you're not kidding. Okay.
yeah, really zero knowledge on cars. But I'm more the motorcycle person. So yeah. So I was always into motorcycles, so never into cars. So it really nothing like the models and stuff like that. No models, no car brands or stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
But then you go into Volkswagen and then you realize they have 8 brands, so yeah.
So
It was pretty
cybersecurity,
cool.
like I'm listening to you talk about your experiences as a kid working on firmware, hardware, just tinkering around. And it seems like you just kind of stumbled upon an opportunity to do security work, and then you just kind of kept going. Is that about right?
Yeah.
What kind of interested you so much to want to keep going with that?
I think just curiosity, you're super curious. You think, it's new technology every time. I'm a person of skill. I really like, we talk about before a bit, me and Daniel at the beginning, but it's like skills is something super cool. And I think you always need to learn something new every day. And with computers, it's like computers or generally technology is like endless. You always have something new. You can always learn something new. I say if I wouldn't be in cybersecurity, I'll probably do some medicine or something. So you can always develop, always do some more and always learn more stuff. And that's why I think that's what drives me every day, when I learn something new. And of course, with cybersecurity, it's like really research. It's not, no one touched it before. It's something completely new, I would say, but the technology is already there. So you must learn the technology for sure. It's like, that's the base. To know the technology is the base. But then on top of it, you need to build in order to find vulnerabilities and stuff like that. So it's a bit different than just to know the technology.
Or just I've got a question about your, you said like a 2, 3, 4 year time period where, it was like your summer job doing penetration testing, doing bug bounty stuff. Do you have any cool stories you can share? I mean, I'm guessing you're around like college age during this time. Is there any
something
cool vulnerabilities you found or something exploit you found that you take pride in now and is kind of like a formative experience for you back at that time?
Yeah, so I did one time, and there was a bug bounty for United, the airline United.
Yeah.
So they had it's super amazing that they had the bug bounty for like so early back in the days. Today a lot of companies has it, but these days it's not. These days it's very common, but back in the day it was not so common. So I did. I just saw the scope of the bug bounty, and then I started to look around, and I found some really interesting vulnerability within the cargo system. So I could just get basically into the cargo system behind through just one of their sites, I would say. It was pretty cool. And then I basically I disclosed it to them, and it was like an email back and forth. They closed it. Everything was super nice. Like they had a very good team there. And then I got like 150,000 miles. Like they paid with miles, which was something you usually don't get. It's actually pretty cool that they did it. And then I flew to I went to India for business. Like I booked a business ticket to India, which was really nice with these miles back and forth. So it's rewarding. So it's rewarding, but not only the challenge is rewarding, but also you get something at the end of it. In bug bounties, and that's actually pretty nice.
Well, we talked about it in episode 202 when we did a primer on automotive cybersecurity and how bug bounty programs have been one of the coolest ways of defending against bad actors, is trying to get good actors to help find the vulnerabilities before the bad actors do it and disclose them.
That's
So
true.
I think it's cool that was like one of your formative experiences in cybersecurity, and then now you've built a really long career after that on banks, airlines, petrol systems, and that now into automotive cybersecurity as well. I'm wondering, throughout these different domains, is there like a couple key lessons from penetration testing for a bank that you were able to apply to a car, or is it a different world every time you move to a different product?
It's not exactly a different word, especially when we speak about the connected cars today. Connected cars, what's the difference when, just a few days ago, there was the Subaru hack. I don't know if you guys saw it, just happened right now. And it's a Subaru hack. It's related to automotive, but actually it's just, it's pure web platform issue, APIs issue, that's the problem there. And that's exactly this, this line between car, metal, hardware, to the software and to the stuff that we know from banking or whatever. It's already very vague. This line, it's super vague. Everything is connected. There's no really big difference. So today, but when you speak purely about cars and put it aside as one vector and the other side is banking, then of course you have a big difference in the technology. You have embedded devices, which is a bit more, it's not like it's just a normal server that just sits in the car, it's completely different. And when we speak about banking and cars, but I think today everything gets so vague and so mixed up together, and you do have some Linux servers inside the car and stuff like that, and it's pretty, some cars, yes, some cars not, but it also depends on the ECUs and stuff. But yes, it's pretty, of course, lots of the things I've learned back then today, when you get to complex environment like a car and the back end and the communication, then of course, absolutely. Yeah, there is a direct connection.
Tom, something I'm curious about, right? Like, it feels like, you're more in sync with the cybersecurity and automotive world than, either Daniel or I. It feels like almost every year there's some big, hack that is hitting the automotive world. But then when I look at the financial sector, they seem to be, pretty locked down. And that applies to, the healthcare sector as well. And I feel like they've started digitizing maybe a lot earlier than the automotive world, and maybe that's why. And obviously, you already mentioned it, but with the automotive, it's not just web applications. You have a web application that's talking to a device that, it's an edge device. It's doing its own thing. Exactly. And that definitely complicates issues. But do you think, I don't know how to say this, graciously, do you think the automotive companies are maybe lacking a little bit on how much effort they're putting into locking things down because it's just a car versus, someone's life in the healthcare world or someone's money in the financial sector?
So I wouldn't say it's their fault. I would say it's our fault. And what do I mean by our? It's like the people fault. We want the cars to have Spotify on it. We want to have Netflix inside the car. We want to have this kind of stuff, So when, if you ask me, I don't think it's really the manufacturer's fault. Of course, it is at the end of the day when there is vulnerability on one of the cars or in this complex environment between the car and the backend, and of course the web applications and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's I think they just rushed into developing something that they didn't, especially here in Germany. Most of the car manufacturers, they are very, I would say, kind of legacy development. They speak about, not sure if you heard about the V model. Are you familiar with the V model between when you develop a car? So there is a development method, like waterfall style. And when you develop a car, there is a V model. And the V model, basically, you start on the left side, which is all the planning and the, designing and all this stuff. And then slowly you go into development, like you start developing, really writing code, making, all this. And then you go into the right side, which is more the integration point of view. And then you go into testing, and then you release the car. But when you think about it today, the cars cannot be anymore released or developed by a V model because it starts here and ends in the other side. You need to have some kind of a cycle of development, right? And when we speak about web application or in whatever banking or whatever IT networks or IT networking, we speak about software development life cycle, which is SDLC, right? So it's a completely different approach. So and the V model is something that very, very deep in the automotive industry, very deep, because they just used to develop a car, finish the design, develop, finish the car, test it, everything is fine, they ship it out, that's it, they forget about it. But today they cannot forget about it anymore. It's a car that is always connected to the OEM. The OEM always needs to be connected with the car, and that's why we need to stop speaking about this V model, and we need to start speaking about a development life cycle. It needs to be a life cycle. And that's what I think where things went a bit, wrong and in the wrong direction.
Do you think the outcome of not adhering to a cyclical, release test process has impacted the big manufacturers, at least, the ones that you're aware of, enough to change how they do development? Especially you look down the road in the next couple of years, it's not like we're going to stop digitizing cars. Connected fleets are probably going to become more of the norm, right? Yeah. So I'm wondering, has that clicked for them yet? Is there a mentality shift happening in the industry?
Absolutely. They see that there is no other choice. They must go. I mean, I put aside now the regulation. Let's say there is no regulation, and the regulation is actually putting them this, they oblige them to do this when it's now mandatory, not the life cycle, but more, it will be the life cycle in the future, of course. They're already working on this new version. But when I put this one at the side, I think they cannot run away from it. They're always developing new stuff. If they want to develop, it's even the stuff when you get from your app that you want to control your vehicle, right? When you want to control your vehicle from the app, there's probably new features, new functions, and in the Tesla, you can just go in and you can buy, 0.6 second faster, that your Tesla will be 0.6 faster. Not sure if you're familiar with this functionality. Here in Germany, it costs 1,800 euro, and I can just go from my phone directly and buy it. And then my Tesla is suddenly 0.6 second faster in 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, So it's exactly these ones, like more functionality that will come, and then it's just a must to work in a software development lifecycle and not anymore with the hardware is hardware, You cannot do anything about hardware. If it's there already, then it's there. That's why they think, or they need to have an approach that they think already from the beginning that they are going to put their hardware, or they're going to design the central computer of the car, or the rest of the electronic control units in the car. They need to have it already in their minds that it's going to be maybe updated, over-the-air update, or not only the over-the-air update, but also and fixing bug, but also adding more functionalities. So they need a better hardware for a future idea that they would have probably in the future, stuff like that. So it must. There is no other way. They cannot run away from it. So that's what I think.
It's interesting to hear you say that, Tom, because I worked at Tesla for a little bit as an intern. And while I was there, I feel like we were experiencing a lot of resistance maybe from like the media saying, I think they're releasing a car like with some software bugs and stuff like that. And I think there was maybe a different approach. Like they took a lot of software engineers and moved them into leadership and said, like, we're not just building a car, we're building a software product. And software engineers, they aren't always scared of pushing something out, because when there's a bug, you can make an update and fix it. And so similarly, people were upset about seeing bugs in the cars. But when I was there, internally, the leadership is talking about, we have to make hardware with headroom. We have to make hardware with more space to become better, because the day that the customer buys the car with a legacy car is the best day that the car will ever be. The car will never get better from that. But they said with a software-defined vehicle, they actually want the best day that the people have with their car to be 5 years down the road, when they've experienced a year's worth of OTAs and the car is now more efficient and it's faster and it's got all these cool extra features. It's interesting to hear when I was at the OEM, kind of the opposite side of what you're saying here, which is like, they were saying,
I put Tesla at the side. I put Tesla at the side. They are the one, they are at the side. I'm talking about more the legacy OEMs, I would call it like that. So
no, but I think now we kind of see that trend across the board, like legacy OEMs as well now offering over-the-air updates to help the software become better, to help the product.
Of course,
the day you buy the car new off the lot, it's maybe not going to be your favorite day owning it. It's going to be a year and a half down the road when they release a new feature and you get it over OTA.
Yeah, of course, it's a must. They don't have any other choice. They must do it. And I leave the cybersecurity at the side, just fixing some bugs or diagnostics or whatever they want. They must do it. It's, Amazon, they release an update they deploy. It means not only an update, there is a deployment every few seconds. Like, I don't know, 2-3 seconds, they have a new deployment somewhere, anywhere in their system. So I'm pretty sure it's going in this direction also to, maybe not every 2 seconds or every 3 seconds, but for sure, like an Apple update that you get for your phone or for your Mac, which we get very often these days. You get an update pretty, I don't know, every week you have, or every second week you have an update in your phone, which is very important to everyone who is listening, of course, to do the update. If you read there on the security implement, you will see that there's some security implementation. But yeah, it's I think we are going more direction of like your iPhone is like iPhone wise or Mac wise or something that will be to the cars that you get an update. And we get update if you have a Tesla, or you guys or anyone who's listening at a Tesla, you get an update pretty often as well. Like every second, third week you get an update, which is fine.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here real quick. Just please entertain me. So do you think that now that OTAs are, readily available, the infrastructure, the network can support it, people have high-speed internet in their homes, and the cars are now capable of actually, talking to the back end or whatever. Do you think to an extent that's making the OEMs a little bit lazier and a bit more lax about what they're shipping, and therefore potentially having vulnerabilities out there and not knowing until maybe someone catches it in a bug bounty program? Ideally, or worst case scenario, a bad actor takes leverage.
I absolutely agree with you with this. But that's where the world is going. It's better to, I guess, it's a two different approaches. You have one approach that you say, I want to deliver software fast. It doesn't matter if it's software for a vehicle or software for your iOS or Android. It doesn't matter. Or, your online banking, stuff like that. It really doesn't matter. If you want to give your customers the functionalities and the features and everything as soon as possible. So yeah, that's how we live today, So if you ask my personal opinion, you should do this one instead of only thinking about security. When I look at the other approach, which is more the traditional approach, the traditional approach is, of course, to test everything a couple of times and to do as many tests as you can, instead, of course, doing hundreds of penetration testing or anything. But at the end of the day, you can only implement what you know and what you can. And there is also a budget limitation. And there is so many limitations that you look at it and you say, okay, then I just release it and hope for the best, which I think that's the approach at the moment. It's good for us, the security researchers, everyone who's a security researcher, and they love it when it's such a fast deployment. Because, of course, as you said, forward's really like that. You have fast deployment means probably more, or leads to more vulnerabilities at the end of the day. But it's just two different approaches. And if you ask my recommendation, I would say my recommendation would be very simple. Try to integrate there is something that's called SSDLC, which is Secure Software Development Lifecycle, and Secure or DevSecOps, which is deployment, development and operation, but there is also security inside. And the whole idea about this one is to deploy or implement security measures, like security testing or something like that is actually being done as part of your SDLC, as part of your development lifecycle, as soon as possible, to find it as soon as possible, and of course to do pen testing as much as you can. But also this one is limited, and also with pen testing, you never know if one guy can find one vulnerability in 1 month, the other guy will find, like another security researcher will find, could find the same vulnerability, but he needs only 2 days for it. It's completely different. You don't really have, because he got lucky. He looked at the right place at the right time, thought about it. It's it's not really pen testing. It's not something that you can actually, measure, like how long you need and how good it will be at the end, like what would be the outcome,
Well, I like your advice here, or your recommendation for manufacturers, right? Involve the security folks as early as you can. Give them as much time as possible to try and find vulnerabilities before you push stuff out into the real world. Even if you're moving at a rapid pace, the earlier you can get them in, the better.
Of course, yeah.
I'm wondering if you have recommendations or advice for us as the consumers. You kind of alluded to one, like if your phone has an update, make sure you update it right away. For cars or for other devices, in your experience, what's the highest leverage things, people listening to this who maybe aren't part of the manufacturer, what can they do to protect themselves in their cars or in their phones, etc., from your personal experience in cybersecurity?
So as I mentioned before, you can do the update as soon as possible. But also try, if you're a little bit techie, you don't have to be like crazy, go really deep dive or anything. A little bit techie, then try to just Google it, or ChatGPT it or whatever, just try to see, I buy a Tesla, how many vulnerabilities you have in Tesla during XYZ, during 2019 or stuff like that, and just see, and you probably look for some news articles or anything, just see at least what is I would say the rate of vulnerabilities, but you can see the amount of vulnerability that are happening in, between each one. Probably everyone has it, but that part in the automotive industry is that no one is really like, in normal cybersecurity vulnerability, when you find something, you have a CVE. You're familiar with the CVE? The common vulnerability exposure. So every time you find a vulnerability, there is a CVE assigned to this specific vulnerability, right? And CVE is like common vulnerability exposure, and it's basically something that it's like a number that being assigned, CVE number XYZ, and then the year that you found this vulnerability, and it's basically assigned to you and to the vendor or something that you found there, the vulnerability. Of course, to the model, to the device, to the web platform, whatever. And those CVEs is like something that, unfortunately, in the automotive industry is not yet established. There is some, like we saw, like for example, in Mercedes, there was something not so, also beginning of the year, something came up and they had like 13 vulnerabilities from something, but it's still not the same as we see in IT infrastructure, like IT networking or other vendors. When you have vulnerability, then this vulnerability being like they are happy that someone found a vulnerability and they actually assign him this common vulnerability exposure, and he has a CVE on his name, you say, basically. And then and in the automotive industry, it's just not like that. They are like they are afraid on their reputation or whatever. So I'm not sure why it's going in this direction. It actually should be going to exactly the other way. So security researchers will engage in everything. And right now, when you find a vulnerability in a car, it's very hard to get to the OEM. It's not that easy. You always need to fight your way in to find it, and you cannot just disclose it. It's not allowed. Otherwise, you endanger other people or something. So
that's so frustrating. And I
yeah.
think I remember reading in 2017, there was a guy on like the Tesla forums who just loved like hacking into and understanding how it all worked. And he found a vulnerability where he could just pretty much get access to the entire Tesla fleet, like the information about it. And he was trying to share it and be helpful. And then from Tesla, at first, it looks like they were a little aggressive with how they reached out. They're like, you need to stop doing all this. And he was like, I'm trying to help you guys. So like, I'm trying to do you a favor here. And it's so sad to see that like they're not more receptive, and they're not trying to remove as much friction as possible from the folks that are trying to do the good work.
Yeah, I think Tesla actually is. Tesla is one always like when we go to these conferences and we do phone to own or stuff like that. Then Tesla is actually always number one. They now always you get like one of the friend of mine, Willem Melching from the Netherlands. We work together a lot and we do a lot of projects together. And he's one of the craziest reverse engineer I've ever seen. And he and two of his friends got a Tesla as a present after they found something, So
wow, nice.
I think like Tesla is actually now maybe they learned from the 2017 case. I know exactly what you mean, and they learned from it, and they are like really engaging now the cybersecurity community and the researcher. But I think other other companies, like specifically when you speak about, Japanese, Chinese companies, and of course the German companies, and, all the traditional companies, they really do not engage. They don't really, the feelings that we have as a security researchers, and I'm speaking about like only the people that I know, like friends and colleagues that actually doing security research, very, very hard to reach to the OEM and say, hey, we found something, fix it, like there are users on the roads that are using your car, and there is like crazy vulnerability there, and it can vary. It can be like low, medium, high, critical. It doesn't matter, and then you don't get answer for, I don't know, half a year, and then you say, okay, what do I do with it now? And it's like like you're trying to run after them or something all the time, and it's like that, unfortunately.
So
Still.
what do you think the answer is there? Like, does this need more regulatory pressure? Like, how can folks like you that are trying to do the good work get the support they need to help these OEMs?
So, SAE is more a like standard body or entity, I would call it. They do more regulations and standards. And for me as a technical guy, when I look at all this methodological stuff and everything, and you say, wow, that's super boring. And maybe it might be a little bit boring, but it's super important, because at the end of the day, when SAE, they have the ISO 21434, which is the cybersecurity for road vehicles. And it is being, for example, in Europe. In the US, it's not yet fully in, I would say. It's not yet like a must. But in Europe, it's a must. Like, you cannot get your car as an OEM legislated in European countries if you are not certified for ISO 21434, right, from the SAE. And this is something exactly that pushes the OEMs to do something. They need to have like manage vulnerability management for the next 15 years, for example. Or they need to have something that's called an RRP, which is an incident response plan. If something happened, if there is a hack in 5 years from now for the car that they just published, then needs to be someone, and there needs to be exactly like an incident response plan if there is an incident, if someone hacked the car, if something happened. Specifically for cybersecurity, we're not talking about something else here, what incident or something, right?
Yeah.
Purely cybersecurity, and that's something that the SAE is now implemented together with the UNECE, which is they just took the ISO norm as the ISO standard and kind of used it in order to certify all the OEMs here in all the cars here in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope it will be in other places, also in China, in Japan, and of course in the US.
Well, I like where you're headed with that, because it kind of reminds me of how we see hardware manufacturers respond to hardware recalls now. Like, there's a very well-informed response. They know exactly what to do, who to disclose to, and they go out of their way to get customer products back in their hands to deploy, a hardware patch, right? Fix the hardware problem. I agree. Like, if there's a similar level of pressure set up around like being immediately responsive to a cybersecurity vulnerability and then disclosing it to everyone so they understand what's going on. Like, there's a that aligns the incentives in the correct direction so that people driving around with cars don't end up driving around with giant security vulnerabilities for months and months on end.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty dangerous, I would say. Absolutely. Yeah.
Tom. Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if you've got any interesting automotive vulnerabilities to share, things from your testing experience or just from being plugged into the community. Are there like very notable stories? We were kind of trying to mention in our primer episode, just about everything on your car, because it's a driving computer now. Just about anything on your car could be used as a way to access the vehicle. I know there was recently a bunch of vehicles that were being stolen by hacking into the CAN bus through the headlamps. Mm-hmm. Like, are there other notable, interesting stories like that not really to scare people, but just to let them know, make them aware of like how vulnerable, their cars are?
Yeah. So stealing, I think, is one thing, and usually security researchers, they are less interested in the stealing point, because stealing the car is nice. I mean, it's okay, nice. I mean, like for thieves and stuff, but
Yeah.
that's not very interesting. When you look for today, when you look for security vulnerabilities within a car, most of the security researchers, they look at the ECUs. The ECU is the electric control unit, right, in the car, and you have many of them. It's not like you have one or two. It's like one is controlling the door, one is controlling the windows, one is controlling your key. You have the infotainment system, right? You have a lot of different control units like that, like ECUs. And most of the security researchers, they go, they just, they order on eBay some of those ECUs, single ECUs. They open it, they look at the hardware and stuff, and they try to find some vulnerability inside. And it's cool and nice. And of course, you need to have super crazy knowledge to do it. But at the end of the day, when you really want to hack into a car, you need to have something that is more complex. What do I mean complex is exactly this kind of things that is not only one ECU. You need to have like multiple. You need to find multiple vulnerabilities in multiple ECUs, right? In order to be able to do something. I will give you an example, which I'm not allowed to say from which company and which OEM, right? I'm not saying anything, but I will just give you the example, okay? And that's exactly what you said, Dan, and that's everything right now. It's connected there inside the car, and it's not anymore. It's not mechanic anymore, everything. What does it mean? It means, the ACC, active cruise control. Mm-hmm. Familiar with active cruise control, right? You have on the wheel, you have the set plus, set minus, you can start it, and then you have the plus and minus for the speed and everything. It's all communication, right? It's all CAN bus communication and stuff like that. And think about a scenario that this ACC is just activated. You're driving the car, everything is nice, everything is okay. You're driving the car, suddenly the ACC is being activated. Okay, everything is now activated. You try to deactivate. How do you deactivate the ACC, the cruise control? How do you deactivate it? You hit the gas pedal, you hit the brakes, you move maybe the wheel, it depends which car is different. But at the end of the day, you try to deactivate it. It's not being deactivated. It doesn't work. You continue to try to do something, but then what you see is suddenly that the set plus, like someone is always clicking your set plus, and you're trying to reduce the speed. You're on the high road, highway. Mm-hmm. You're driving super fast already. You are on 150, and you cannot reduce your speed. The engine, the motor is always revving up and everything. And what do? The ACC is just continuing. You cannot deactivate it. You can hit the brakes, but, you hit the brakes is very dangerous because it gets warm, and everything. Yeah. You're on a high speed. And at the end, you cannot even engage your handbrake because the handbrake is also, a button, which is a CAN bus at the end, right?
Yeah.
So that's, for example, a very, at the end, we just ran into someone on the road or a wall or whatever, or a building. And that's exactly what I mean by when you do a car hacking. It needs to be something that is a bit more complex. It cannot be only one single ECU. I mean, it can, of course. You start with one single ECU, and then you move on, and then you build like kind of an attack vector that you say, I hack this one, I go into the car, from the car, I go to the gateway, from the gateway, I go into different ECUs in order to do something about it. And that's for example, something that we did find in one car. Exactly this attack vector of attacking the active pulse control.
Is that because when you have multiple units, it's more likely that there is a vulnerability that the developers didn't catch? Whereas, like, I don't know, if you look at my 2013 Corolla, there's a single ECU, not much going on there. It's quite basic, and they probably did all the testing that they could.
It could be that you will find still something, but then what do you want to achieve at the end of the day? That's the question. You know what I mean? If you want to, for example, we want to achieve their assassin someone, it's something that it's like the target. So when you try to find a security vulnerability in a car, what's your target? Is your target just to find a vulnerability, or is your target to really cause something? To do something. It's the same as you ask in on online banking. What's the cause? Why? What's the goal of hacker to hack into someone online banking? the goal is to steal money, So stealing a car, it's one goal. Of course, it's happening a lot. We have another goal, which is, for example, tuning, engine tuning, right? It's another goal. We have also assassination. It's one goal. And we have now these days in the newer cars, we have all these services, features that you want to activate by yourself, without paying, so you just avoid paying. So there needs to be some kind of a goal behind it when you do cybersecurity for cars specifically. It's you need to have some kind of a goal behind it in order to and it's usually complex. It's not only one single issue,
I see. Do you think that the average consumer, going back to what you were saying when we first started chatting, you said it's kind of our fault that a lot of these vulnerabilities exist because we keep asking for things and the OEMs just keep pushing it out. Yeah. Do you think the average person is aware of the cost of these features? Because like in my head, as a car buyer, I think people are good at, for example, looking at the engine and being like, has this engine had any issues with this generation? What about the paint? What about, X, Y, and Z? But I don't think anyone is accustomed to understanding like what cybersecurity concerns does this car have, or the firmware running on the cars from this OEM. Yeah. So do you think people are like aware of the risks of these smart cars and the features that they want so badly?
I think not at all. Zero, if you ask me. I would go even with minus, because we are all coming from a super technological background, and I went technological not on low-level technology. I'm talking about that we work with tablets every day, we work with the computers. It's for us like something that works. People that were born with that iPhone was already there. It's amazing because they just touch, the normal touch. You remember back in the days, I don't know if you guys remember back in the days, the touch from, the touch from back in the days, it was really bad. I mean, really, really bad if you compare it to the touch today that you have thermal and stuff. So that's, so we're just born with it, and then when you have a car which is super technological, nice car like Tesla today, or like other, if we speak about the Chinese market and the Chinese brands and everything, you look at it as is, you get the car, that's the software, and everyone is just, happy that they have it, and that's it. It's like you're using Instagram or TikTok or whatever, this kind of stuff is the same idea. You just take it as obvious. And it could be that TikTok is not good, or Instagram is not good, or Facebook, or whatever you call it, all this kind of stuff, not good for the end user, and the car is the same. So some people are making their thinking, yeah, it's good for me, it's not good for me, but everyone think about privacy most of the time. That's what we are focusing in. And your car, I think you shouldn't think about only privacy. You should think about your safety. That's why I think for me, it's a whole different level. My safety, I drive 250 kilometers per hour. I'm not sure how much it is in miles, but 250 kilometers per hour in the German Autobahn, if you're familiar with.
Yeah.
It's like, if something happened to the car at that moment, I'm dead. If someone is hacking into the car and disengage something or whatever is happening, I'm dead, and that's a safety concern. It's not yet privacy. It's not about the software only. I think it's something that any cybersecurity vulnerability can lead into a safety issue. And that's the big problem, I think, in cars, or the big difference.
Tom, a question for you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, so it's okay to say you don't want to answer, but what car do you drive? Like, what do you feel safe in the car that you drive? Is there recommendations, brand-wise or model-wise, you give people if they ask you, like, what's a safe car? Say I'm in the market for a car, or Fabod's in the market for a car. What advice would you give us around, purely for safety, right?
Well, if you ask me what I drive a Tesla, because I have the Model Y. It's a great car. I'm very happy with it. As I said, I get always new software and everything, which is nice, like software updates and stuff, which is great. But if you ask me what's the best car to drive, is an old-timer. Just take I love those 60s and 70s. I also, it's amazing. It's like, I think that's the best cars today. But if you want to be honest, the day-to-day car, you will not use your old-timer. I don't know, like a Chevy from '67 or something. You probably won't use it. But think there is no real one car that I would say less or more. All the Chinese cars, I think they are great. Probably, maybe I will try a Chinese one. And I think if you ask me the real reason, what will happen in the future, we spoke about it, Daniel, that maybe we will see the future or something. And I think the future is that we are going to do the same as we have, as we have the phones or computers, that we are going to change our car every 3 to 5 years max. And then it doesn't really matter. Then you have your car for 2-3 years, lease it, have a leasing, and then change it to the next one, and that's it. It's then it doesn't really matter. Then you change the first one. You have like Tesla at the beginning, then you have a Chinese one, then you have a German one, and then it's just going to be some kind of a roll, like a cycle of stuff. And I don't have any specific recommendation for a car which is more secure or less secure. I didn't test them all, so I cannot say.
I will say one thing real quick. Going from someone that didn't know the difference between a VW and a BMW to what you just said, which is you love the classics like a 67 Chevy. I love that. I love seeing that transformation. So good for you. You're in good company. But the second thing I was going to say is, like you said, you haven't tested all of these cars. But when you are planning on buying a car, are you seeing yourself consider things or doing XYZ research that you weren't before? And if so, could you share that with us so that we know what to look for in our next car too?
Sure. So exactly this one. And why do I have a Tesla? It's because I really think they push the boundaries in cybersecurity for cars, and also push the boundaries generally for software, automotive. And that's what I like about it. And I think it's great what they do. And they also pushed everyone around them to do it. So if they are pushing the cybersecurity, then I do kind of a deduction here that maybe they will push, maybe all the other vendors and OEMs will also initiate, they will have some kind of initiative to go and do some security research and engage with security research. So if you ask me what would I suggest, I would totally tell you, just go and see if they have a bug bounty, if they have like something that they speak openly about the security issues and everything, then it's a good car. Then it's something that they really care about it, And if they if you go and you search for an OEM and you see 0 vulnerabilities, then something is probably wrong, And
That's a good point. Fair.
That's what I would do if I would think about. I mean, I don't need to do it because I live it day to day. I know exactly who's yes and who's not. But for a normal end user, just go and just Google it or ChatGPT it. It's very simple. You just get in a nice table directly in ChatGPT. Probably it's pretty good, good enough.
And for Bode, it goes back to what you were saying before. Like, as a buyer, you research engine reliability. You research how long you think the paint will last or whether you think the leather seat will crack, right? This is just another piece of research for people to add to the equation now when they're making that type of decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I guess also the software is lagging or that's what we are going to see probably, or we are seeing now, how people reviewing the software. Like, is it lagging? Is it good? Is it not good? How is the quality of the resolution of the screens in the back seat, stuff like that. That's where it is, And yes, security needs to be part of it. I hope that people will actually take it under consideration and not only, think about the technology behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I need to personally thank you for giving me another argument in my arsenal of arguments with Daniel. He's been bugging me about getting a new car. I have a 2013 Toyota Corolla I don't want to get rid of. And now the cybersecurity thing, that's my argument. My car can't get hacked. So, yeah, there we go.
Until someone found something, but 2013 is pretty old, so I don't know.
We don't need to go
Tom's
there.
saying no one would want to steal it, so you're good.
I mean, you need to think. You need to think if there is any goal, and if you think that there is no goal, not to steal it, not to hack it, not to do anything, so probably you're quite okay.
I'll take it. My car's hack-proof is what I'm getting from Tom right now.
No, I think, Tom, this is kind of an interesting point and we alluded to it a little bit before, but we're fortunate enough that SAE International sponsored this episode and facilitated the conversation where we're able to meet cool experts like you and talk about their field. For folks who are listening to this, how can they get involved with SAE International? I know there's a course you teach as well. Like, who might this be appealing to, and why might they be interested, and where can they get involved?
Yeah, so I'm basically the an instructor for what I spoke before, the SAE ISO 21434, which is the cybersecurity for road vehicles. It's and there is a certification from the SAE that I teach, and to other colleagues that are teaching it as well, very knowledgeable colleagues, and it's more for people that are coming from the automotive industry. Like if you're coming from the automotive industry and you want to have more knowledge about, or you want to go into the direction of cybersecurity for automotive, then that's the course for you. Absolutely. If you're already working in the automotive in the cybersecurity area, then of course it will be great to understand what's the next standard that is going to be that is going to make your job. And at the end of the day, this standard, like going towards the certification of the standard of the ISO 21434, is exactly this is exactly this idea of having the cybersecurity integrated completely within every vehicle on the road today. And I think that's exactly why everyone who is doing somehow or something related to cybersecurity in the automotive needs to go through the certification of 21434.
Well, we'll have a link the SAE provided us in the show notes so people can check out more information on that if they're interested. Tom, I want to thank you for fighting the good fight, right? If you're helping cybersecurity engineers everywhere get informed on what the new standards are and how to make vehicles safe, then hopefully you're making a future in which I can convince Verbode to buy a new car and he's not scared about the cybersecurity risks associated with it.
Tom, agree, yeah. Before we forget, where can people reach you? Where can people follow the work that you're doing? LinkedIn, Twitter?
LinkedIn, just go for my LinkedIn. It's fine. I was, not only posting my research, but also other people research as well, like colleagues and stuff that are also doing research and stuff. And go for it on LinkedIn. It's Tom Zaubermann with a Z, Zaubermann. Pretty simple, I hope. And
we'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, go for it. Contact me if you have any questions or something, with pleasure. I'm always happy to answer. Thank you, guys.
Tom, I've got one more question for you because I checked out your LinkedIn. Can you tell us a little bit about the recent project you shared on there, making the Tesla speedometer?
Oh, yeah, that was fun. Actually, I started it like 2 years ago. I just didn't have a lot of time to continue, but this time I just managed to gather everything. Yeah, so it really drives me crazy that you don't have the Model Y, that you don't have the instrument cluster there, the speedometer there, or tachometer, you call it as well. So I started to research if there is anything, and of course you can buy some Chinese stuff, aftermarket stuff that you put there on the Tesla, and then you connect with cables and everything. And I said, wow, so many cables, why do you need it? So I just decided to do it by myself. So I designed the 3D model for everything. I 3D printed it. Then I put everything also on something that is pretty cheap, Raspberry Pi and some OBD stuff, which is over Bluetooth. So if it's over Bluetooth, you don't need so many cables. You only need one cable, which is electricity, and that's it for the Raspberry Pi. And then, and then it just sits there nicely in front, and it works, and I did the design. I'm not a design person, so probably it doesn't look very nice and, futuristic or whatever, but I'm pretty happy with how it came up. You can look for my GitHub and of course see it, and it's pretty cool
that's
project.
What I was going to say. Verbode's a huge open source proponent, so he'll be happy to see that you open sourced everything and it's all on GitHub.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It was interesting to do it. There was some challenges there with the Bluetooth stuff and the ELM 327, which is the protocol for the OBD over Bluetooth stuff. So it was very challenging and very interesting at the same time. So I'm happy I'm done with it and it works now. So that's it.
Yeah, and you're selling yourself short. I'm looking at this, and it's pretty sleek and minimalist, so perfect for a Tesla. So good job on the design, too.
Thanks, man. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, so, Tom, usually one question we ask everyone before we wrap up for good, and really it's the premise of our podcast, is we like to say we're trying to find the secret sauce behind technology and communicate it to everyone in a way that they can understand. I'm wondering if there's secret sauce behind your field or even your career trajectory. If there's any advice you can give anyone related to cybersecurity on how they might get started or what they might need to know. Is there any hidden nuggets or secret sauce in your knowledge that you can share with us before we end?
So a good friend told me not so long ago something very interesting that I thought, wow, that's actually what most of the security researchers and cybersecurity people do. It's just that they are not afraid to dive in. Just don't be afraid to dive in. If you need to read some documentation, then just read the documentation, and then it will take some time, a few hours or maybe a few days, maybe a whole nighter that you need to put there in order to, make something or understand something. Then yes, then that's how long it takes, and dive in, then jump right on and dive in. I think that's the best thing I can say to anyone who wants to, because cybersecurity, you really need to dive in and understand.
No, thank you. We really appreciate your advice. Appreciate this conversation. We'd love to stay in touch, Tom. And I don't know, anything else you want to share before we leave?
No, thank you very much, guys, for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate this conversation, man.